For the people at home, they want to know what this HUBzero thing is all about. So, Michael, why don't we start with you? What's the 30,000 foot view? What problem is this solving?
Well, briefly, what HUBzero does is it gives people a framework for taking their science and bringing it online. And it really straddles two different worlds. In your introduction, I noticed you talk a little bit about CMS, and it certainly has aspects of a CMS, but it also has aspects of what we call scientific middleware that allows us to provide access to high-end compute resources for people who want to run scientific simulations. So there was a little bit of discussion also in the introduction about GitHub, and the difference that I would draw between it and GitHub is GitHub is a place where you can go to get codes. Our hubs are typical places where you can go to run codes. So not all scientists that put codes onto a HUBzero instance actually want those codes to be disseminated in their source version, but they do want other people to be able to access and run their codes. So really, with this straddling of these two worlds, what it allows people to do is it allows them to collaborate, as you talked about, to disseminate and publish information, and to enable resource and access sharing for these high-performance computing resources.
Well, that sounds really awesome. How did this get started?
If you go back in time now to about 1996, this was a vision of a professor at Purdue named Mark Lundstrom, who really just wanted to bring simulation tools online. And the project over the years since then became sort of a victim of its own success. The initial part of bringing those simulation tools online was very successful. And then people wanted to add more content to go along with those simulation tools. So hence the birth of the CMS side of what we do. And as time went on, we made it easier and easier for people to publish their simulation tools online. It grew and grew within the field of nanotechnology. At one point around 2004, people started asking the question, could you use that same infrastructure that you used to run what was called NanoHub at the time to run all kinds of scientific communities? So out of that, the HUBzero software was extracted as a core framework and then disseminated as an open source project to run many other scientific communities. So today, we're not just running nanotech communities, but we're running earth science, biology, healthcare engineering, climate research, STEM education, social science, and a variety of other sites and different sciences.
Well, that's fascinating. So this idea then that you're providing not only a CMS and a connection facility, but providing a way to basically be software as a service. What are some of the complications of that?
The complications come with expectations of various clients. Developing a platform like this is challenging because a lot of times our users are scientists, not infrastructure programmers, and our team is primarily infrastructure programmers. So in some sense, our team doesn't necessarily live in our customers' shoes on a day-to-day basis. So it's challenging for us to really understand what's going on in the scientific workflow and how to embody that in what we do from a development perspective. This is beginning to change. More and more scientists are starting to straddle those two worlds, but when this all started, they certainly didn't. We have additional challenges in that we work in a university environment, which means that we have to support ourselves while we do this work and in sort of the university way. And even the fact that we've been around for quite some time has provided some challenges for us because a project that now you can kind of think of as about 20 years old needs to continually recognize the point at which it needs to reinvent parts of what it does. And this is something that you really have to step back and take a look at periodically.
Well, I really like, as I was looking at some of the demonstration sites, I see that they're really, we used to call it Web 2.0, but basically just fancy. It's the word now. Or doesn't look like Web 1.0. I think that's really the only important thing. I see you're using jQuery UI, lots of good animations, things like that. I presume that obviously those weren't in there 10 years ago. So at what point do you start thinking about adding that sort of stuff to make it, more enticing for the intended audience?
Well, we typically look for tipping points. For example, if you look at some of the ways we've run simulation tools in the past, we've provided a VNC window within a browser to do high performance rendering on a back-end render server and provide that experience through a browser window. But as you look at the way that those same kind of delivery mechanisms are evolving today, particularly, say, with Jupyter notebooks, you see that a lot more of this kind of activity can be done on the client side. And we look at innovations, for example, Jupyter, and see at what point is it sort of not just an isolated experiment that's going on in a few labs here and there to a point where it's actually impacting an awful lot of users, an awful lot of scientists. And that's sort of when we make the decision that those are things that we think we'd like to bring into the core of what we do.